A very good morning to all of you. I welcome you all to the ICANN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. So, we will start the day with the quote of the day. So, this is a quote on education. It says, "Education without values, as useful as it seems, rather makes man a more clever devil." So, this quote is by C.S. Lewis, and I believe, as far as I remember, this quote was also asked as a question in the essay exam paper. So, this quote you can use where you have to talk about some social evils or crimes that are occurring, for instance, corruption, bribes, rape. And you can use this in cases where you are dealing with a question that is talking about degradation of values in the society, like bullying or disrespect of women, senior citizens, and all that. Then you can use this quote to talk about the importance of educational institutions and their role in the society, and the importance of particularly value based education in the current society. So, in all these cases, you can use this quote. In fact, there is a very similar quote that is being told by Gandhiji also. The quote says, "The greatness of humanity is not in being human, but it is in being humane." So, to be humane, it is very important to have education with values. So, that is where education should always be with values. Otherwise, it doesn't serve the social good or the public good. So, with this, we will start with the first topic of the day. Rather, we have only one topic for today, which is India-China relations. Most of the newspaper articles today were related to India-China relations and COVID. So, there is only one article. We'll be discussing that. One article as in one topic. There were nearly 5 to 6 editorials on just India-China relations itself in combined both the papers. So the first information is on now that the relations between India and China are getting so much deteriorated and the border standoff is getting so much escalated. So this is now having its impact or repercussions even on the economy also. So you must have seen already so many people putting statuses and WhatsApp forwards which talks about boycotting several Chinese apps and the Chinese products. So in this case, the Indian Railways was to have a contract with a Chinese engineering firm. So that contract is now this particular Chinese firm is set to lose this contract now. And similarly, Department of Telecom has asked the BSNL also that BSNL was to source some equipments from China for upgrading of its 4G capabilities. So now Department of Telecom has asked BSNL to not to source these equipments from China for upgrading to 4G facilities. In fact, in looking at the current situation, the safety and security of networks which are built with the help of these Chinese equipments will be under scrutiny. So it will not be safe for the security of the country to use the Chinese equipments. So this shows how the border relations between the two countries can also have severe repercussions on the economic relations as well. So this is one thing. And the next, as you can see here itself, there are already 4 editorials which were there on India-China relations. So we'll be discussing just the important stuff from a combination of all these articles. So, the recent issue has been the martyrdom of at least 20 Indian soldiers at the standoff in the border in the Galwan Valley in Ladakh. So, why this issue or the fact that why this is so severe is because this is the first combat death since 1975. So that means for the previous 45 years, even though there were several border skirmishes and these troop standoff that were happening, but there was no combat death that had happened. So this is the first combat death since 1975 that has happened. And it also shows the brutality of these clashes and how so many soldiers have sustained injuries, and at least 20 soldiers have also been martyred in this case. So this is the recent issue. And what has been the China's stance on this? Basically, the talks that were going on now on this border issue was basically to do 2 things. One is to de-escalate and then is to disengage. So de-escalate and disengage. This was a twin strategy with which the border talks were happening at the commanders level. But the China's stance now has been very different and very shocking also. that the Chinese foreign minister has already asked India to find out those people who are responsible for illegally crossing the LAC and even punish those people who are responsible for this. And China has also claimed sovereignty over the entire Galvin Valley, and it is very unlikely that after claiming sovereignty and after these soldier deaths, so which means China is very strong this time and it is unlikely to pull back. So this has been the stance as far as China is concerned. Now, in a different article, what it spoke was now ever since we established diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China, and ever since the Nehruvian times, we have adopted a three-pronged foreign policy towards China. The first leg of this three-pronged foreign policy was towards improving the border infrastructure. So this was given a lot of importance after independence to improve the border infrastructure. So in the mid 1950s itself, a project was piloted to build an Indian Frontier Administrative Service or Indian Frontier Administrative Service, which the work of this particular service would be to improve the areas and the frontiers at the borders, to develop the infrastructure there and for overall development of these frontier areas. So the Indian Frontier Administrative Service will have personnel who are drawn from the Indian Administrative Service, Indian Foreign Service, and also the Indian Police Service. So this was actually doing good work, but then it had to be stopped in between. In 1968 itself, it was stopped. So then its role was transferred to the Indian Army and also the Border Roads Organization. So but however, even to this day, if you look at the frontier areas between the India-China, these areas continue to face a lot of neglect and lack of focus from the center. So in fact, in 2019, the chief ministers of Arunachal Pradesh and Mizoram, they called for the reinvoking this IFAS once again. So we have to set up the IFAS once again for development of the border areas, was the suggestion of the chief ministers of Arunachal Pradesh and Mizoram. So this was the first strategy that India had adopted to improve the border infrastructure. For that, it had set up the Indian Frontier Administrative Services. The second strategy that we adopted was to improve our relations with the neighbors, because our equation with our neighbors, if it is very strong, then we will have an added advantage when we are dealing with China. So we started to improve our relations and consolidate our relations with our neighbors like Nepal and Bhutan. And yesterday itself we spoke about the right palm and five finger policy of China, according to which Tibet is the right palm of China and the five fingers are the Ladakh, the Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan and Arunachal Pradesh. So accordingly, we started to improve our relations with these five fingers and also with the immediate neighbors. So in that case, we started improving relations with Nepal and Bhutan. We enacted treaties of friendship with both of them. Ladakh became a part of Jammu and Kashmir in 1947 and Arunachal Pradesh also. And in 1950, India signed a treaty with Sikkim and made it a protectorate. And later on in 1975, during Indira Gandhi's government, Sikkim became the 22nd state of India. So like this, we started to develop and consolidate our relations with the important neighbors. So here again, if you look at these countries and the kind of relations that we have developed with them, so you will know why our relations today with Nepal has turned out to be sour, but with that of Bhutan it is strong. The reason being, when we consolidated our ties with these countries during those times, we enacted a treaty of perpetual peace and friendship with Bhutan in the year 1949. So after that, on the insistence of Bhutan, we revised this and we formulated an India-Bhutan Friendship Treaty again in 2007. So in this, one particular article which had committed Bhutan to be guided by India while determining its external affair policies. So this article was done away with in the 2007 treaty. So the 1949 treaty had made had an article which said that Bhutan should consult India while deciding its external affairs policies. So, this particular article was done away in 2007. So, this helped us to cement our ties with Bhutan, which we could also see during the Doklam crisis, where Bhutan stood with India against China in the Doklam's crisis. But however, with Nepal, we had signed a friendship treaty in 1950. But after that, Nepal has been insisting several times to revise this treaty, but then we have not been revising that. So we have dragged our feet on reviewing this 1950 treaty, and that's one of the reasons which has led to a sour relationship between India and Nepal today. So this was the second limb or the second pillar of the three-pronged policy, which was related to cementing and consolidating our ties with the neighbors and the five fingers of the five-finger policy. The third pillar of this three-pronged approach is India's policy towards the palm itself, that is the Tibet, India's Tibet policy. So India during those times decided to give shelter to Dalai Lama, who took refuge in India, and also lakhs of Dalai Lama's followers have come to India since 1959. So, and today the day is such that Dalai Lama is now lauded worldwide, and the loyalty of Tibetans worldwide is also now received by Dalai Lama. So in this situation, this was the India's policy during that time. But now there is no apparent successor of Dalai Lama. So in this case, China will try to force its choice on the Tibetan community in this case. But because India is home to so many Buddhists, and also the fact that India had given refuge to Dalai Lama, so many Tibetan followers are Buddhism followers are there in India. India must also have or play rather a prominent role in this discourse, at least, that is who will be the next Dalai Lama. So India's Tibetan policy during that time was the third pillar of the three-pronged approach that we adopted towards China. So now, because of these approaches also, there was no violent clashes after the war of 1962. So after the war of 1962, there was no violent clashes between the two countries. So why was this? Because India followed a twin policy of one is diplomatic engagement and the other is physical disengagement. So at the physical level, there has to be disengagement. At the diplomatic level, there has to be engagement. So this was the twin policy that India had been following. So because of this, there had not been any violent clashes after the 1962 war. So what was the result of this? The result is that today so many portions of the LAC which are being contested by both the sides, like for instance the Pangong Tso Lake formations. So these contested portions of the LAC, the contentious portions of the LAC are being patrolled by the armed forces of both the countries. So without engaging with each other, they are just patrolling these contentious areas. So that is good. But however, China has used this to its own advantage. So China has started encroaching into the Indian territories on the pretext that there is no clarity in the LAC. So China's perception of LAC is different from India's perception of LAC. Under this pretext, China has encroached upon the Indian territories. So, so many traditional grazing areas of people in the upper reaches in Ladakh have already been encroached by China, citing that that was their perception of LAC. So this is the result that Chinese encroachments have been happening across the LAC, because they say that their perception of LAC was very different from India's perception of LAC. Of such encroachments, illegal encroachments by China, we did engage with China on a diplomatic level. We signed 6 bilateral agreements with China in 1988, 93, 96, 2005, 12 and 13. So we have already seen how the effectiveness of these diplomatic agreements in the previous videos, and an analysis of all these agreements we have already analyzed. So in this case also, India missed a very vital opportunity, particularly in the 1993 agreement. So in 1993, India's Prime Minister Narasimha Rao visited Beijing. So there we signed the Treaty of Peace and Tranquility. But what happened during signing this Treaty of Peace and Tranquility? India proposed that the word existing should be used before the word line of actual control, so that whatever is the existing line, that would be that can be freezed and there will not be any conflict or confusion in the future. But China didn't agree to use this word existing, and it said that it's okay, we can see about it later. And somehow India also signed the agreement. So, because of this, now China is intruding and encroaching illegally upon the Indian territories by saying that its perception was LAC was very different from the India's perception. So this was the analysis of the diplomatic engagements. We did sign several engagements, but then it didn't work out to our benefit because of the Chinese issues with the perception and their aggressive behavior. So, however, post 2014, if you see that there is a policy shift. So, before 2014, the policy was to have diplomatic engagements with China to resolve everything at the bilateral level with the help of talks. But the armed forces should not get engaged. So, this was the main policy before 2014. But now there has been a policy shift. So, this was witnessed even in Chushul in 2014 and even in Doklam in 2017, and now you can see this policy in the Galwan Valley and Pangong Tso also. So now what has happened? Now what is so much different now? So if you look at now our border security establishment, so our border security forces are now engaging engaging more actively in the border, and they are also preventing any encroachments or incursions by the Chinese side. So there is active engagement by our armed forces at the border. So for instance, China had constructed some illegal jeep tracks. So these constructions were removed by the armed forces. Similarly, China in the Depsang Plains in 2015 in Depsang Plains, China had constructed a watchtower and a camera was installed on a PLA hut. So Indian troops had destroyed even this. So now there is more active engagement of the troops. This can also be seen in the 72-day standoff that happened at Doklam. So here again, this happened at the tri-junction of Tibet, Bhutan and India. And Indian and the Bhutanese armed forces cooperated in this, and they stalled the construction of a road by the Chinese. If the Chinese had been successful in constructing that road, that would have shifted the tri-junction further south, and that would have affected India's strategic interests in the region. So, but during this Doklam standoff, again the armed forces were engaged along with the Bhutanese armed forces, and they refused to lower the army presence in the region. So finally, it led to the withdrawal of the Chinese forces only from the area. So this was a very big diplomatic victory for India. So all of these shows how in the recent times there has been a policy shift and there has been an active engagement of the armed forces in the recent times. So the recent policy that the border security doctrine, if we may call so, can be summarized by saying that it is proactive diplomacy together with firm ground positioning. So this is the word to be used, that proactive diplomacy together with the firm ground positioning. So why? Because even Kautilya in the Arthashastra, he quotes that he highlights the importance of the military might for any kingdom. So this military might is needed for the deterrent and to demonstrate a strong national power. So therefore, a strong military is very important for a country. So this was all about the India-China relations. So as I said that there was only one topic today to be discussed, and next we'll be discussing the question which you all had to suggest. And I personally did not get any time to go through the questions, but I was sent a list of questions. I have picked up a case study because either way there is only one topic to be discussed, and case study discussion will take a good amount of time. So today is a day where we can spend that time. So the case study goes like this. It is the COVID time is there, and there is a person who is in the junior or the initial years of his medicine degree, and then because of the COVID crisis, he has been called to voluntarily to do the COVID related work, that is to attend to the patients and all that. So first of all, there is lack of expertise on his part, that he don't know how to handle the things. But even though this has been said to be voluntary, there is more pressure from the hospitals, from the seniors, to be part of this and to handle the patients. And secondly, the boy is also frustrated because first of all, he has to do this when he himself doesn't have much knowledge. And secondly, there is also lack of personal protective equipment, so he feels endangered, that he feels he is more vulnerable now to infection, so he might himself catch infection. So that is a big disincentive for him to be part of this. And apart from that, he feels that he is taking so much of a risk exposing himself to the infected people, yet people are not thankful to him. There have been many times when if the relatives they come and they thrash the doctors because the patient has died, so the relatives, they beat up the doctors. So this is something again which is discouraging the boy. And thirdly, the boy lives in some area, and there the residents or the house, his house owner wants him to not come to the house and to shift his house or something. And because he feels that the boy may be carrying the infection which will spread in the whole colony. So there again it shows an insensitive attitude. So in the light of all this, some 4 questions have been asked. And Raja is also feeling that he wants to now quit his job because of all these issues that are going on. And at the same time, his family is also very much concerned about him, and they also don't want him to expose so much. So this is the whole case study. So in this regard, 4 questions have been asked. So how do you approach? So first of all, when you are approaching any case study, even like case study, you should always take out some good amount of time to approach, and don't approach it in the end when you don't have time to think also much. So whatever be the case study, don't directly jump to the question that has been asked. So you have to write some type of introduction. Now the type of introduction that you have to write, there are different ways by which you can write the introduction. There will be some 5 to 6 case studies, suppose, in the examination in section B. So you can you can introduce each of these questions in a different way, so as to break the monotony for the evaluator. So he will also feel interested in evaluating your copies, because each of the ethics case study has been handled in a different way. There is a different presentation for each of them. And one thing that let me tell you, in this, while I'm taking this case study, I'm not going to tell you this is how you have to write or this is what you have to write. I'll be telling you this is how you have to write, but not this is what you have to write. Because in ethics, there is nothing like the right and the wrong answer. Any answer you write is right only, it is correct only. It is just that you have to give a good justification for whatever you are writing. So that is the bottom line you have to remember in ethics. And another thing is, there is also a lot of misconception that ethics answers have to be written in the form of paragraphs or something to give it an organic look and appeal and feel. But that is not the case. So you can experiment with various forms of presentation. I did a lot of, I tried out so many presentation methods, and I did all that in the examination. Tabular column, pie chart, SWOT analysis. I did all these kinds of things in the exam. So it will definitely pay you also. So now in this question, the introduction can be, let's say, done in 3 ways. So first, you are just summarizing what the whole incident is about, or what the whole case is about. In some of the toppers answers copy, you must have also seen they start with the stakeholders. Who are all the stakeholders? Or you can start by telling about what values, or what does the whole case study indicate, what values are indicated by this. So this is another introduction. Another is to write down the ethical dilemmas which are presented in the case study. So this is another form of introduction. So like this, you can come up with various forms of introduction, and you can use each of them in different case studies. So for instance, in this particular case study, what I used in one of the case studies, I'll be showing. So for instance, there is a fact premise and there is a value premise. So make a tabular column and then write the facts in the case study. and then accordingly write what values it is showing or it is reflecting. So for instance, there was lack of PPEs for the doctors and the hospitals. So this shows that there is insensitivity towards the doctors. There is lack of preparedness. Similarly, the relatives of the patients were attacking the doctors. So this is a fact that was given in the case study. So this value premises, it shows lack of emotional quotient. It shows responsiveness on part of the doctors or the hospitals may be low, so because of which the patient has died. So it shows the lower responsiveness in the hospitals, or the poor emotional quotient of the patients. So both the sides also you have shown the values. And there is another fact that the boy is considering to leave the medical college or to leave medicine course completely. So this shows that the boy also has poor emotional quotient. He does impulsive decision making, then has an escapist tendency or an attitude. So, and then there is dereliction of duty by trying to escape. So all of these are the values which is shown. And then you can say, the next thing you can say is that there is pressure from the seniors and the hospital for the boy to do this, even though it is a voluntary program. So this shows how social influence and peer pressure, they all play their roles. And then you can write the house owner and his attitude. So this shows the insensitive attitude, the selfishness, unempathetic attitude, a self-centric attitude of the owner. So these are the values of the owner. So by this way, you have mentioned some of the most important facts, which is also a summary of the case study. At the same time, you have also mentioned the important values that are involved in the question. So this tabular column, if you go to write this in the form of a paragraph, just writing a summary of the case study will itself consume one whole paragraph. So, but in this case, you are also summarizing the case study. At the same time, you are also pointing out what values are involved in each of these situations. So this will consume less space, and it will also be more readable because the presentation is good. So similarly, you can have the approach of the stakeholders. So you can write various stakeholders, and whenever you are writing case studies, you have to remember that when the answer is written completely, you have to look at these stakeholders again. So the case study in that you must have addressed the problem from the point of view of all the stakeholders. So this acts as a very good check for you that you have considered all the dimensions. So this is very important. In this, the stakeholders can be Raja, who is the person, who is the boy involved, and then the hospital, the patients, their relatives, then citizens at large, then seniors in the college, then the government itself, and the house owner. So all of these are the various stakeholders who are involved in this particular case study. So now let's come to the question that is asked. The first question asked is, what factors are responsible for this condition of Raja? So now Raja is facing a lot of feeling very dejected and is feeling that why should he continue in this medical profession? Why should he even study further? Because first of all, as doctors, he is himself not getting any protection. And secondly, even people whom he is serving, even they are not thankful to him. There is so much of pressure. Why should he do all this? So the question is asking what factors are responsible for this condition of Raja. So before answering, let me tell you, it's heavily raining here. So you must be facing a lot of noise issues today. Excuse me for that. But I have to do this now. So what factors are responsible for this condition of Raja? So in this case, the first factor you can say is there is lack of preparedness. So preparedness is lacking on several aspects. So you can say there is shortage of doctors, there is too much of patient load, and they have to do too many long hours of work without any break. So there is so much of pressure because of this lack of preparedness. The second reason you can say is that there is an insensitive attitude towards the doctors. This insensitive attitude is shown in many things. For instance, there is no personal protective equipments that have been given to the doctors. This shows that there is an insensitive attitude towards them. Second is the behavior of the homeowner. This again shows the insensitive attitude. Third is the way relatives are attacking the doctors themselves who are treating their own family members. This also shows insensitive attitudes. So the third is the stigma in the society. So there is a stigma associated with the doctors who are treating the COVID patients, and there is so much of fear because these doctors will be spreading the infections in the locality. So there is a lot of unnecessary fear or panic that is created. So this panic and stigma associated with it is another reason. And then it's also the helplessness of the people. So helplessness of the people, why? Because they are going to see their loving, their dear ones die in front of their eyes, and they can't do anything about it. And this is also the kind of disease which has no history. So they are panicking, and sometimes out of helplessness this does happen. So this is one thing. And again, the bottom line is that COVID-19 is such an epidemic that is unprecedented. So there is no precedent for COVID-19. So it's natural for human beings to respond in such manner where they have not seen something that in the past, okay, people have been cured, this has come already. So that factor is also not there. So definitely, as I said, there is nothing right or wrong in an ethics answer. You can add even your own more reasons to this list of reasons. So these are the basic reasons which I have told. The second question is, now Raja is facing a dilemma. The dilemma is, should he even continue in the profession? Should he leave it and just go because he is unable to, bear so much of pressure? So is this dilemma justified on part of Raja? So here again, yes or no is up to you. So nothing is right or wrong. You can say yes, the dilemma is justified, or you can say no, the dilemma is not justified. But in any case, you have to just justify your answer properly. So that is the most important thing. So my answer would be yes, the dilemma is justified. So why it is a yes? Because you look from the point of view of doctors. These doctors are just normal human beings, and they are doing this job of a superheroes. So they are the corona warriors. So they have been selflessly serving the people in such difficult working conditions when they are themselves getting so much exposed to the virus and the infection. Even in such a situation, is a basic personal protective equipment not a very basic right of the doctors? It is. So occupational safety is very important. So that is also not being provided to them. So a society that understands and that acknowledges that yes, the doctors are doing a great work in these very difficult times. So that acknowledgement from the society, is it not a basic thing? It is. So similarly, a government which can give them a basic personal protective equipments to protect their own lives, is that not a basic thing? It is. And similarly, a sense of gratitude on part of the society and the patient family that these doctors are doing a great job. This sense of gratitude itself is the reward for a doctor, because the doctors are serving selflessly, and just one sense of gratitude and just a thank you will be such a good morale booster for them. So that is very and also if you look at the kind of crisis it is, and there have been so many articles we have also read before that it's very important for the government to realize the importance of health and invest in hospitals, doctors and medicines. So this again is the most basic thing for a citizen to expect from the government, that the government should invest in hospitals, in doctors and medicines. So all of these are just the basic things, and if these basic things are not granted for you to work, then how can you work properly? So the dilemma is justified, but I will say that yes, the dilemma is definitely justified, but there are few considerations which we have to consider because the situation is unprecedented. The first thing is, you are saying that even a personal protective equipment is not being provided to you, but before this crisis we were not even manufacturing PPEs. So after the crisis has started and after we realized that we have to be self-reliant on all these things, so many factories have now been set up by the government for being Atmanirbhar in this, for domestic manufacturing of the PPEs. So importance is now it is realized. Before we weren't even manufacturing PPEs. So even if we are asking the government, where will the government give it from when we were not even doing this in the first place? Similarly, when it comes to families, the relatives of the family members are coming and beating the doctors. But you think from the point of view of these families, for them their agony is understandable for a doctor, because the kind of crisis this is, once a person is detected of COVID, then the person is not even allowed to meet the family. They are completely separated and the patient is kept in isolation. And unfortunately, if the patient dies tomorrow, then the body is also not given to the family. So that is a level of crisis this is. And it is very understandable, being a doctor, to understand what kind of pain and agony the families face. So this is a basic understanding which an empathetic person will have. So guided by my values of empathy and understanding the pain of the families, and also understanding the practical things, constraints that as a situation, as the country is facing today, the practical constraints, even though I may be justified, or the Raja may be justified in having this dilemma, but considering these practical scenario and considering the the pain of the families and all, so it may not be completely justified to say yes. So that is how I would word it in the end. So this is the answer to the second question, that is this dilemma justified. Then part of the question is, the question says, how should Raj respond? So how Raj should respond, here again this is completely personal. Whatever you want to write, you can write. So in this I would have written, started with a quote of Swami Vivekananda which says, service of Jiva is worship of Shiva. So that is precisely what I am doing. So my call of the duty, the service motto, that is very important. So I am becoming a doctor to serve people. So that will definitely be at the top of my priority. And yes, I have, that is the first thing. So I'll start with Vivekananda quote, then I will talk about the service motto and the call of duty. That will be the second thing, second point under Raj's response. The third is that yes, I have less expertise, but that doesn't matter. So one of the dilemmas of Raj is that he is himself not very much learned to be able to handle this crisis. So the response would be, yes, I may be having less expertise, but that doesn't mean I can't do anything. So whatever little I can do, I will try to do. So try to do whatever I can, even though I have less expertise. Next is, there are impatient relatives, right? So again, as I previously explained, there are impatient relatives, but I, as a doctor, I have empathy and I understand their agony. So this is an unprecedented situation and the kind of crisis where the families are separated from the patients, and even the patient's body is not given to the family when they die. So in this crisis, I definitely understanding what pain and agony the families are going through. So in that case, first of all, if the families are getting impatient, I will try to explain them how the situation is, how the virus responds, how the virus behaves. So I'll try to explain the situation to them, and also I will be empathetic and understand them. So patients also and their family members also require some amount of understanding from the doctors and the governments. So next is, you come to the homeowners. So homeowners, they are troubling you. First of all, they're creating so much of stigma around it. So what can you do? You can just explain them, you can persuade them, you can convince them. So these are the things that you can do. Of course, you can't expect that their behavior is going to change overnight. So that is not possible. But this is what you can do. But if they still continue to harass you, at max you can go and give a police complaint that you are a serving doctor and you are a corona warrior, and in this situation your neighbors are harassing you, your homeowner is harassing you. So this is one you can do. And you are a doctor in the initial years, and you are already well versed with the social media, you know how to operate social media. So you can use your social media account to raise awareness about such kind of stigma that is prevailing against the doctors. So you can also call support for yourself, and you can create awareness that such stigma should not be there, and if it is there, stringent action should be taken against it. So such awareness you can create using social media. Then you come to personal protective equipments. So they are not there as of now, but yes, government is already beefing up the capacity to manufacture the personal protective equipments. So that is done. And then at this time of crisis, it's very important to keep the morale high. So you can create a community with your peers, with your seniors, so that it keeps the morale of all the doctors boosted. So that is very important. And then next is, you just have to basically tell yourself that this is a testing phase and this too shall pass, because this COVID is the environment and I am, it's me. And when you compare myself with the environment should never be big. So because that is something external, but I have the power within me, an internal power. So we should never make environment itself so big that it becomes bigger than our own self. So we should always make ourselves bigger and the environment should be smaller. So this fact I will make myself realize by reiterating it to my own self. So these are all the methods through which Raj can respond to this situation. Then the last question is, what advice will you give to Raj if you were his family member? So you are a family member of Raj, and what advice would you give to Raj? So here again, many times the confusion among aspirants is that if I write, okay, being a family member, I will tell Raj that you go and serve. So that will be very idealistic, very utopian, that practically we won't do. It's not something like that. You have to choose something where you are putting the public in a public, because you are a public, you're going aspiring for a public service, a civil service. So you have to put the public on the front gear, so in the front seat. So definitely you should tell that yes, you are going to go and serve, but at the same time you have to understand the practical constraints that you might face in doing so, and you have to address those things. So that is how you frame a practical answer. So in this, being a family member, what will you advise? See, first of all, if I were to be the family member of Raj, I would have had two feelings simultaneously. One is, I would have felt very proud of Raj, that he's a corona warrior and he is a frontline worker who is going there, exposing himself, but to save the lives of others. So I would be very proud of Raj. At the very same time, I would be worried or sometimes even scared of for Raj at the same time. So this will be my twin feelings that I would carry if I were to be the family member of Raj. So I would have this feeling of Raj being a soldier at the frontier who is trying to protect the country from the enemy. So this is the kind of feeling that I would get. I would be very proud, at the same time I would be scared. So, and the second thing that I would tell is, see, as a family member, it's my attitude, it's my family member's attitude that whenever there is any difficult situation, we must not run away from it. So no escapist attitude should be encouraged. So I will definitely not encourage Raj to come back, to quit his job, to quit his studies, to stop a medicine practice. So I would never do that, because I am myself not a person who would quit. So this is one thing that I would not encourage escapist attitude, nor I would ask. So therefore my suggestion to Raj would never be to come back. So next, third thing you can tell is, you are a family member of Raj. So what can you do for Raj so that he can be better at his workplace? So he is constantly exposed to virus. So you can think about how you can boost Raj's immunity by giving him some immunity boosters to Raj. So that is one thing that you can do as a family member. At the same time, even though Raj is a family member, he is getting exposed to various infected patients. So even though you are a family member, you love Raj, but you will have to maintain social distancing from Raj, because you have to safeguard yourself also. So here you have to display emotional quotient and not be emotional that no, you have to go and be with Raj. That won't work here. And then if I'm a family member and I will have my own set of neighbors, so I can go to my neighbors, I can talk to them, and I can create awareness among them, educate them about the kind of battle that the doctors are facing against the virus and the kind of duty that they are rendering to the nation by doing this, by exposing themselves so selflessly in the service of others to save so many lives. So by this, I will also be contributing to reducing the stigma that is attached with this. So I can again use social media and run some campaigns where I will be educating the masses about the dangerous, how dangerous the virus is, and how we should not fall prey to these stigmatized things. So that way also I can contribute. So these are the various ways as a family member I can do. What advice I would give to Raj is definitely to not quit and come back, but to see and also advise Raj how he can cope up himself at the workplace, So, if for instance, if Raj is feeling any small symptoms of sickness, then he can home quarantine himself and observe himself what he is going through. To boost his morale, I would also encourage him to form a group with his peers and seniors, and keep his morale high, and always be available to Raj. So whenever he is feeling low, so be available to him, counsel him. So these are the things that as a family member you can do and you will do. So this is it, and in the conclusion, just write some qualities that it's very important that we have at this time of crisis. We have to be more empathetic, we have to think about the others and not be self-centered and indifferent about the whole situation, and we have to with courage and conviction we have to undertake our actions. So by some of these words you can use and you can conclude your answer. So that's today. And today also I didn't have any question, because usually I ask question on the topics that I have discussed the same day. As today it was only India China, so I had nothing to pose question. So many of you have already given so many questions today, so I'll take up one of those questions on Monday. So that's it for today. Thank you, and study well in the weekend and